So if you can imagine going back 30 or 40 years and walking into a supermarket, you might have found 300 or 400 different items. Now it's what, 30,000? Yeah, 30,000 different things in colourful packaging with long lists of ingredients on the back. Nutritionally, they're all essentially the same. They're all what are called ultra-processed foods. They're apparently cheap to buy, they're certainly convenient, they taste fantastic because they're designed to be so palatable in a way that we've never experienced in our evolution. And they are really very enticing. They're hard to resist. But, as David says, they're low in protein, they're low in fibre, they're high in fats and carbohydrates, and they've got enough salt that their flavour characteristics hit what's called the bliss point.
So biologically, what happens in terms of the evolution of diet is that over evolutionary time, biology of species comes to be adapted to the kinds of foods that are available within the environment in order for them to be able to use those foods to meet their optimal nutrient intake. What we see with humans and the rise of ultra-processed foods is the opposite. We've got a category of foods that is adapting itself to exploit that biology that has evolved in natural food environments. And our biology, our physiology, even though it appeals to our behavior, our physiology is not adapted to cope with those foods, because never in our evolutionary history have we experienced such a food environment previously.
So if you take something like industrially processed ice cream, for example, it's a mixture of sugar and fat that you would never see in nature coming together in that way. It's entirely manufactured. All its ingredients are at least several steps removed from real food, if at all, associated with real food. And I think in the book we made the point that it was closer to the petrochemical industry than to the food industry.
Well, as close, exactly.
As close, yes.
So what happens is in industrial processing, the ingredients that are added, the formulations are as they are to appeal to taste, as we've already said. And so there's an optimal mixture within the food industry known as the bliss point, where components, ingredients, even nutrients are mixed in particular proportions that appeal maximally to our taste, that are most enjoyable, known as a bliss point. Then there are all sorts of chemicals added that some of them are found naturally in foods and others aren't, but they're found naturally in foods in very different contexts. For example, the flavorant that provides artificially the taste of strawberries or bananas. It's the same flavorant as found in natural bananas. But in bananas, it appeals to our taste buds because it indicates that there is a background of nutritional goodness. There is a balance of fiber and various other components that our bodies are well adapted to eating. In the manufacture of ice cream, that same compound is extracted and added to a very different background, causing our biology to be attracted to it, to eat it in large quantities, and hence the kinds of problems that we have, because our physiology is not adapted to deal with that nutritional background, whereas it is with a whole food nutritional background, as in the banana. And it's not only palatability, it is also convenience. So additives are introduced into processed foods to extend their shelf life, which is, of course, convenient for us. What else is convenient? There's palatability.
Superabundance. They're all the time, aren't they? They're never rare, unlike the fruits in the forest. They're just there all the time.
And the other thing is that the ingredients that are chosen not only for palatability and convenience, but also for commercial competitive advantage, which means reducing the price. So cheaper ingredients rather than better ingredients are what characterize that category of foods.
And so, taking exactly that point, we did an analysis of the costs of macronutrients, and protein costs more money than fats and carbohydrates. And so you can see there's an economic incentive on food producers to take out the protein and to replace it. And if you replace it with carbohydrates and fats, you get the double benefit, because people are going to eat more, not only because it's cheaper, but because your protein appetite is going to cause you to have to eat more to get enough protein, which is what's ultimately the most powerful appetite.
And it's not a double benefit, it's a triple benefit, because studies have also shown that the macronutrient mixture that is most tasty to humans is one with a low percentage of protein, approximately 5%, and relatively high percentage of fat to carbohydrates. So not only do you get the cheaper at the cost benefit and the convenience benefit, but also a palatability benefit. So it's a killer combination, which you can understand how our diets are being diverted towards excessive intake of that category of foods that were invented and introduced to be a form of gastronomic entertainment. But what they've done is they've come to be that enjoyable and convenient and cheap that they're now displacing what is actual nutrition in modern human diets.
To the extent that in Australia, the average number of or proportion of our calories that come in the form of ultra-processed foods is in excess of 50%. We studied in the US data that indicated that some people are getting virtually 100% of their calories from these ultra-processed foods. And when you add to it that you've taken the fibre out of those foods, it means that it's very difficult to know when to stop eating. So your protein appetite is going to drive you to continue to eat enough to get to your protein target. But you normally would expect every time you eat in a meal to have cues that stop you overeating meal by meal. And the principal one of those is fibre. Fibre stretches your stomach and you feel full while you're eating, and then you'll stop eating while you digest the nutrients and the calories. If you take the fibre out, you can have eaten 3 times more than you need without your body even realising it. And at that point, you've really taken the brakes off the appetite system.
What fibre also does is it slows down the rate at which we absorb nutrients. And that gives the body the time and the capacity that it needs to measure what our actual nutrient intake is. So we're eating large amounts of fats and carbohydrates on low fibre foods, but we're also absorbing them very quickly into the body, and that means that they don't make their way down to the large intestine, where we have evolved to feed a really important component of our own biology, which is the gut microbiome. So what we're doing in eating those rapidly digested and absorbed carbohydrates without the fibre, the associated fibre, is we're depriving the gut microbiome of nutrition. And the gut microbiome provides very important health benefits, including providing information to the appetite systems that help us to stop eating when we've had enough of particular nutrients.
So the real irony there is that we're overfeeding ourselves and underfeeding our microbiome, which we rely on not only to provide us with some of the critical nutrients that we're unable to make ourselves, some of the particularly vitamins and some of the amino acids, but they're also responsible for training our immune system. And our immune system has to learn what things are foreign and need to be fought and what things are part of our normal healthy environment. And when it's not taught properly, because our microbiome is not properly looked after by what we're eating, you end up with a greater risk of problems to do with autoimmune diseases, for example. There are many different consequences that arise from having an imbalanced microbiome. So again, it comes back to the way that our biology has evolved to expect our food environment to be, and how we've built a food environment that isn't like that at all.
A large part of the way that we are dealing with it is to consider this not really as a food problem, but as a further opportunity for commercial benefit. So in processed foods, another thing that is stripped out is micronutrients, vitamins and minerals. Of course, now there's a supplement industry then you can buy those as additionally processed components of our food. And should those fail, which of course they do, then there's a medical industry where you can buy pharmaceuticals. So what's happened is we've created an environment where the tail wags the dog, is that the commercial system is what we are serving rather than have the commercial system serve us for good health and well-being.
And the great irony is that many of the drugs that we now need to take to maintain our metabolic health, to keep our blood levels of glucose and fats all at the appropriate levels, those drugs work because they act on the same fundamental biological pathways as would normally be acted upon by nutrients in the foods that we eat. So really, if you go back to listening to your appetites, taking comfort from the fact that they're still there and they're still working, you can use your appetites and listen to them to guide your food choices, and you avoid the ultra-processed foods that are going to otherwise inevitably make you go wrong, then you can fix it really quite simply.
And of course, in the short term at least, we can't change the broader food environment. In the long term we can, but what we can change is our own personal food environments. That is the environments in our houses where we choose what we're going to eat when our appetites are telling us we need something to eat. And if you do that, you don't need diet books and diet calculators, because we have got something that is much better. We're equipped with something much, much better that's evolved over millions of years, which are these appetites that can balance our nutrient intake in the correct environment.
And a really neat example to leave you with is when your protein appetite is saying you need to eat more protein, what you'll start to crave are the flavours associated with savouriness. Umami, as the Japanese call it, that flavour that's the lip-smacking savoury flavour you get from meat and you get from mushrooms and a whole series of both plant-based and animal-based foods. Now, if in those circumstances you instead reach for a bag of barbecue flavoured potato chips, you've just been fooled into eating a protein decoy. It's been manufactured to taste like protein, but it's just more fats and carbs, and your protein appetite will keep you looking for more, and that's going to drive overconsumption of calories.
I was so absorbed listening to David and Stephen, and I hope you got a lot out of their video. And I do suggest you buy their book. I'm going to give 3 books away that have been signed by David and Stephen. All I'd like you to do is leave your comments and tell me what part of the book and what part of their speech you enjoyed, and also what you intend to do or have done to change what's in your pantry and change what's in your fridge with natural foods with lots of fiber that will help you live a longer life. We'll see you soon. Bye.